And I feel very blessed and very privileged to be here. I couldn't be in a better place to hold out through a pandemic and sequential lockdowns and so on, because, you know, I feel so sorry for people locked in apartments. I mean, it has really highlighted how unsustainable cities are.
When you're teaching, do you come here every day?
No, so the course runs 2 days a week. So I probably end up working 3 days a week on the weeks that I teach. Because I don't teach all the subjects, there are some gaps there where I don't have to do teaching.
Right.
So that's where I work on my own business. So the consulting and designing and landscaping and stuff.
My name is Lauren and I come from the mid-north coast. I was born in Sydney, but I grew up on a farm in the mid-north coast, which is closer to Newcastle. I suppose everything happens when it's meant to, you know. I had other lessons to learn before I sort of delved into permaculture, and when I watched a documentary, The Re-Greening of the Luan Basin, and it's and I found a way of developing communities or helping people that didn't cost the earth. You know, didn't cost the earth, it helped the planet as much as it helped the people, and it was like it clicked. At that moment, I was 25, I think, living in Rio. So I came back to the Northern Rivers and I found Bunya, who you met the other day.
There's a few native vines.
And he was doing little PDCs from his house out this way, actually, not far from Maynard. And I moved into a house that with a landlord and a backyard that a landlord didn't care what I did. Yeah, so I did my PDC and I landscaped the backyard and just got obsessed.
It's a bit of a so not many of the bananas. These ones were planted a bit earlier, and there's a few going there. We could later on we will get some more banana suckers and maybe plant a few more in gaps to fill that line in. Now, because now we've done all that work, we want to make sure we're then feeding something else that's going to drive succession and create a forest, not just more weeds again. So we have a few more gaps we can fill in there later with bananas. And then I stayed at university. I started studying landscape architecture, and I worked out really quickly, having had basically nothing to do with computers by then, that all nights on the computer doing graphic design wasn't going to be my thing. So I then shifted my studies to like ecology. It's the forest ecology and environmental sciences, and found that fed my need for knowledge and learning about the world a lot more. But the lack of practical integration and just the nature of just bringing up problems of the world that seem to have this hazy, possible theoretical solution, but not really feeling like I could achieve things. So I then did a permaculture design course with Robyn in the late 90s, and then from there got into woofing. So I was able to then explore many different farms within Australia in different climates and regions, and sort of learn about their approach to permaculture, and in travelling there and working and learning with them, having access to their libraries as well. And so I sort of had quite a few years of a bit of a learning journey of doing a bit of work on farms for cash and doing lots of woofing and travels in between. Yeah.
I'm Robyn Francis. I'm here at Janbun Gardens in Nimbin, Australia, in the subtropics. And this is my Permaculture Education Centre. It's also my home, and it's a demonstration site. And it's my little permaculture paradise. Permaculture is about conscious design. And so, say the backyard that I grew up in was in town, it was a 1/4 acre block, so 1,000 square metres. With permaculture design, we could have improved it dramatically. And I know I see a lot of people, one of the things that inspired me to study permaculture and teach and design was I was seeing a lot of people in the 70s moving from the city, buying land with these big dreams of becoming self-sufficient and living organic and natural, and they didn't have the knowledge and skills, and they were just creating problems for themselves, and their dream became the biggest nightmare of their life. And just simple things like what we call in permaculture zonation, being really conscious of the proximity of things and how often you need to interact with them. You see people and they've got their vegetable garden, way over there, and they've got their compost system way over there, and it's and permaculture is more than just designing the garden. So my background, gave me a really good grounding and a lot of practical skills. Gave me a good mindset, but I would not call it permaculture because it was not consciously designed, applying the principles of permaculture as an integrated system. So we might just sort of start here. And here we've got our education centre building, with our classroom, commercial kitchen, office and so on. It's all built with or designed passive solar and using local natural materials, earth bricks that were made on site, pressed earth bricks and local hardwood timbers, sustainably harvested, and sawdust, sand and cement, or sawment we call it. So turning a waste product from the timber mill into a durable building material. In 1977, I'd just come back from being overseas for 5 years, travelling and learning about traditional farming systems and village culture and all that stuff, wild harvest. And I came back to Australia 77. And I saw Bill Mollison speak at an organic festival about permaculture, and that was before the first permaculture book came out. But it really resonated with me because I'd been thinking similar things, but it just took it so much further and had a design methodology and incorporated and integrated so many other things that I was interested in, like passive house design and appropriate technology, and I'd never actually made the connection between all these things together. I just saw them as isolated things that were interesting, that I wanted to do.
Hello, Lauren speaking. Yeah, pretty good. Yeah. I'm literally out the front. Yeah. And just. Okay. This is the community college, Byron Community College. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 classrooms and a computer room. Permaculture set 3, Permaculture set 4, PDC, visual arts, a whole lot of short courses. This college does heaps of short courses, so like visual arts, languages, computer stuff, pottery, floral making. It's heaps. The Cert 4 and the Cert 3 Permaculture are probably the biggest courses that happen within the college. So this garden was actually designed by someone in my Cert 4. So when I did it, we did a needs analysis and a site analysis that was at this space, and we looked at the temperature that the concrete was getting. It was really hot. There was nothing really here, and so it determined that we need shade structures. And this is the Paraguayan trumpet tree, and it's spectacular. When it flowers, it's mass bright, like baby pink flowers that it drops everywhere. It's really quite beautiful. You know, when you're doing such practical things, to be able to incorporate that into your learning space, it's like in kindergarten kids do the finger paintings and stuff and they put it up on the wall. In a place like a community college like this that runs a lot of cool courses, instead of the finger paintings being up on the wall, it's a pizza oven or it's a garden or it's, you know, but it's the same idea of really like applying that practical knowledge and then showcasing it as like, this is what our students and our tutors can help our students achieve and complete. So it's
So you can do that first, and then chop up the garlic and mix a bit of garlic and salt in. So might need that first. Yeah, that'll work. It doesn't need that.
Fine. You see, we always learn something new.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, I only learned this one more recently. Like when I was in Brazil, we were always just buying the packet.
Yep.
And it wasn't until someone showed me that. So that's what you can do if you got the fresh stuff.
Wow.
Yeah. And so I think it's actually quite an exciting time, I think, to be sharing more of this work with the world and helping to educate on, the kind of the design, I think the design framework and philosophies of permaculture, I think, can be integrated so well into so many other valuable mindsets or techniques or frameworks of thinking and design. In terms of land management, I think that holistic management and agroforestry and so many other techniques that are cutting edge and evolving and creating great solutions, I think they can all cross-pollinate and fit in with the framework of permaculture as well.
Oh no! Where were you hanging out? See, you missed out, didn't you?
Oh, Louis.
The course I did was actually the first ever permaculture course for women, and that came about because the first permaculture convergence that happened in early '83, it was mostly men there and only 3 women, and everybody was a bit worried about that, and especially Bill said this is not sustainable. To be sustainable we need equal, preferably more women than men involved.
So, pandemic, no pandemic, climate change is coming for us all. There's no vaccine for climate change. It's a real thing. Our climate situation is changing.
Fast.
fast, yeah. And we have a very small window to play our part and save ourselves, essentially.
You know, the supermarkets in the city have got almost empty shelves. And yet here in our village, you know, we can go up to our little local independent grocer and all the shelves are full. You know, there's not many empty shelves.
By supporting local, you create stronger community. Like, it has its ongoing effects too. Like, you create a stronger community in general. So when things like pandemics do hit, you're more supportive. You're supporting each other a lot more, and they're two very easy things that we can do. You don't have to buy new all the time, and it's even with a balcony. You can have you can be growing your own leafy greens, and then when you can't, farmers markets, they're everywhere now.
Climate change is just a symptom of overconsumption, of overshoot. You know, consuming more than the planet can actually regenerate, and generating a lot of pollution. So the ultimate problem is not climate change. That is a symptom of the ultimate problem, which is overconsumption.
I learnt something personally, you know. I learnt how important it will be to have this knowledge of being able to grow and build and feed myself and live off the land in the most sustainable way. You know, if there's a toilet paper shortage out there, I'll be fine. We've still got some tobacco trees around, very soft, 2 leaves, 2 ply. Yeah, so go and bulk shop all the toilet paper all you want. Yeah.
Daily life, yeah, wake up, exercise, tend to the animals, look at the schedule, the to-do list. There's 101 million things you need to do while you're living on land, you know. Every day is a new day, new job. Yeah, my name is Clark. I live in right here. I come from here. I come from where my feet hit the ground. But I grew up in St Kilda in Melbourne. I wish I had learned about permaculture before I started traveling. Because of my travels, I've been in many, many places, but never really tried to find out about or educate myself about agricultural adventures, you know. Did I first hear about it when I moved up here? I'm not sure. I can't remember. But here is where it's kind of taken shape. You know, the first thing I did was study horticulture, and that was the kind of, okay, maybe the industry is going that way. And then through that, I think, because the same TAFE, community college, was teaching permaculture, I thought, oh, you know, maybe I'll do that one day. And at one point when I was looking at the horticulture, I thought, oh, permaculture, horticulture, I'm not sure. This probably has more jobs in it, maybe. Maybe. You don't know. So you do that. But I didn't do it for work. I did it for education. Mullumbimby Farmers Market. Hosted at the Mullumbimby Showgrounds, where every year they house the Mullumbimby Show. What do I like about the market? Well, unlike the supermarket, not everyone's in a rush. Everyone's in a rush to get out of the supermarket. Here it's like, no, okay, what do I need? Oh, you see some people that are rushing. Yeah. What else do I like about this place? The people that run it, the people that work here. Over years you get to know the people, you know. You know, you could use the permaculture principle, slow and steady solutions. Start looking at your supermarket bill. What could you get from a bulk food shop that perhaps gets their products from a closer distance, so that you're not adding to the food miles that aren't listed on your packaging costs.
We're today at Namabunda Farm, where we're camping for a few days, and this project has been running for 4 or so years, and it was initiated originally by a relationship between Ethos Global Foundation and Bunya and Tribal Society, who are the landowners on site. They joined forces on seeing if they could facilitate projects to happen which can support specifically Indigenous health originally. So we're on land of the Widjabul people here, a group of the Bundjalung Nation. So what we're going to do is put maybe a few little patches of pumpkin seeds there, and we hope that our scrub turkey's left now, so we actually get the pumpkin. So maybe like 3 little patches of 2 just all around that hole, and then we'll come, hopefully with you guys, we'll get back here again. The project we're on is us doing a sort of orchard transformation into a food forest of a 20 to 30 year overgrown lychee orchard. So it's had a long period of time of being under vines and lantana and barna grass and camphor laurel and big overgrown lychee trees, which are still productive but no longer manageable. It's just feeding birds and bats, and it's all overgrown, so it's no longer for economic production.
And horticulture does offer really, like, I love their focus on understanding a bit of botany, botanical names, planting. There's a lot of great information in that course, but I don't feel that it has the same attitude to reading and working with the natural landscape and nature and what she likes to do. That is one of the beauties of permaculture, is we don't, as a designer, when I'm sitting down in a place like this, I don't decide that this is where I want a tree. Like, if you have a particular tree and it has particular needs, you have to find the spot for it. So the land dictates how and what you're going to do on it if you let it, you know. With horticulture, it's often like, no, I want to do this is what I'm going to do, like, you know, make the changes I need to. So,
Yeah.
So I was visiting my friends and clients in the backyard that we built together last year. And I say built together because they helped me a lot. Yeah, I designed it and created it. Now they're growing their food in it, and that was the whole focus of this backyard, was habitat but also food producing. So now they're able to every day take something from the garden, put it in their mouth. It's so good.
So this is one of our garden areas. We've got 3 garden areas. This one we grow most of our summer crops in during the wet season. And so you can see I've got a lot of perennials here, the cassava and spices like the galangal and turmeric and Jerusalem artichokes, so lots of tubers, Jerusalem artichokes, yacons, taro. So let's go around and chuck this into the chickens' forage yard, or I can put some in here, actually. Oh dear, somebody's not shutting the gate properly. There you go, girls. Through the 80s and early 90s, all our communication was via newsletters and the International Permaculture Journal. And in the USA, they had another publication called the Permaculture Activist. And then in the mid-90s, when the World Wide Web came on, then things started to sort of shift to online. And that's, you know, that has certainly enabled a much wider exchange of information. But permaculture's spread has really been largely due to the PDC, the Permaculture Design course. So this is a woodlot and wildlife corridor. It's a native forest system, which is sort of productive as well as here for the natives. I've got these little dense groves of our local rainforest bush foods and medicines and craft plants. So the palm lilies here, these broadleaf ones. Some of these will have really wide leaves, and they're traditionally used for wrapping food for cooking, especially fish. Oh, it's just divine.
So the PDC is the base course for permaculture.
Which means?
it would be, say you were interested in doing, you were like, oh, yeah, I'd like to learn a bit more about permaculture. It's like, I think, might be something I'm interested in. Or you have a property and you're like, actually, permaculture would be a really good concept for this. But you have no real knowledge or understanding of what it's about. You do a PDC. 72 hours, it's a giant download of all the concepts that we kind of, where it should be an up-to-date, smorgasbord of all the concepts we use. It goes through a bit of ecology. It helps you to start to be able to read landscapes and put together pieces and designs, basic. It's intense though, and that after that you need to really practice it. If you don't practice all that information, you're going to lose it because it's a massive download.
We talk a lot about legumes and nitrogen. We know that they've got a specific relationship with specific bacteria that feed it nitrogen. We're learning more and more that there's all sorts of organisms that have relationships that being good at getting phosphorus, good at getting boron, good at getting this and that. So nitrogen's just that tip of the iceberg. We're starting to learn that. We now realise there's this whole web of stuff that. And I think that I think probably as permaculture education and the PDC particularly has evolved over time, and I think needs to keep evolving, is a lot more of that hands-on practical engagement. I think that through the PDC and the permaculture education model is a really valuable design framework and way of thinking, and is a real intense crash course on lots of subjects.
Well, it's different when it's passed down in a book because the actions are not there. You don't learn the information as easy. What's the statistic I read the other day about synapses in the brain, and it takes like 500 times to do something for a new synapse to, connect. But when you're doing something like an activity or a group setting where you have the knowledge of dance or singing or something that's creative, it takes maybe 10 times if I'm not mistaken. You don't see the bigger picture that is painted for big industry to provide stuff on the supermarket shelf, Behavioural change, hardest thing to do. If everyone stopped shopping at the supermarket and you were employed by the government for yourself to grow food for yourself, who wouldn't? Sorry, you have to spend more time at home with your kids and your family and teach them how to grow just as your father would have or your mother would have. What a terrible change that would be. Less work outside and more work at home. But you can't do that in an apartment block. Let's try something new then, maybe, Let's do something else. So, did I think that I was going to change the world by getting involved in permaculture? Not really, no. I thought I'd just try something for education. It's all education purposes for me. That's what I'm on the journey of knowledge. Whether it's how to grow a carrot or how to put up a structure. What do you need when you're surviving, Food, shelter, and water. Find them, wherever it is.
Change needs to be kind of free range in a way. It all needs to happen, but what the changes that I'm making with my life, I don't expect people to live the way that I live, but I do kind of expect people to try and make some type of change, be it buying secondhand clothing and you know, that's the beauty again of permaculture, is that there's no set of rules like this is what you have to do to be practicing permaculture. It's like no, as long as the ethics at the heart of your decision is fair share, earth care, people care, then whatever that looks like to you, go for it. Be that, let that bit of free range. And yeah, organic gardening, permaculture, as long as it's healthy and it's helping the earth, I don't care, you know, like, I don't care what you call it. There are people practicing permaculture that are not calling it that. There are people doing things that I wouldn't consider to be permaculture sort of based, that they call permaculture. So it's, at the end of the day, yeah, call whatever you're doing whatever you want, but as long as it's got those ethics at the heart of it, I support it.
And I think that, yeah, the social aspects of permaculture have lots to offer and are probably not been so well taken on thus far. But I think that ways of looking at social permaculture and how we can integrate ways of organising ourselves inspired by an understanding of natural human behaviour and the way that the natural ecology works have huge possibilities. So I think overall my work is predominantly more as understanding a design framework, be it on a urban scale or a rural scale, and I think that I'd like to hope that more town planners, land developers, these sorts of things integrate these stuff on a bigger scale with more resources and can really have a hopefully a more profound effect than lots of separate projects.
Shove it back, chop all the leafy green bits back to cover up the compost, and then the canes back there where we can sash them and tread them down. So the wild tobacco has been really good for that as well. We've also used, so I can start pruning the tremor, the poison peach that naturally comes up there. We can start to prune some of their branches to lay down as well.
You need a pretty high level of understanding of science within particular topics. You can't know it all, like, because permaculture takes bits from geology, from chemistry, from physics, from biology. You're not expected to be an expert at every single science topic, but it's all applied knowledge. So it's within soil. I know chemistry and biology within the context of soil.
So I was always searching, but I've always been curious. So I don't know. What am I searching for? Did I find it when I got here? I haven't left. That's one good thing.
You're still on the journey?
Yeah, you're always on the journey. You never stop learning, never stop looking and questioning, hopefully. I think it's easy in the city to get clouded because there's so much noise. When you have air to breathe, things just seem to move slower.
Yeah.
Next to the neighbor.
Yeah. Some of them might be.
Do you regret anything?
Oh. Yep, definitely regret. Wow, it's not a regret. It's just a wish that I wish I had known about permaculture before I started traveling. Because of the amount of travel I've done, the knowledge that I perhaps missed out on by not knowing about it before I started traveling. Because I would have already been on this journey. But no, it all happens for a reason and at a time that it's meant to, Is it possible to change the world? Yeah. Well, if humanity wants to survive, if they want to keep living and thrive, it's not easy to change your habit. Humans are creatures of habit. So to change the habit is a hard thing. Well, what is your awakening? It's consciousness of self, right? So if you're conscious of yourself and how you feel and what you want to do, then the behavioral change comes easier because you essentially you want to change for you. Watch your foot, because there's a rat trap underneath the thing.
That'd be great stuff.
Fuck, that would be shit, man.
Talking about this though, the monoculture thing is not really, it's not really a need, and it's actually not necessarily how the coffee grows best, but it's a system.
Anything grows best.
Yeah, it's a system, and we're saying like that locally, the local growers here, a lot of them machine harvest, but that's really low grade because you don't get the right ripeness. But hand picking is so expensive with Australian labour.
Yeah.
So the only ones that can afford are the ones that sell at the markets, that do all their own processing, sell direct to the markets, and get the whole profit margin.
Yeah, that's right.
If you're just selling coffee, you can't do it. That's why everyone buys it from Colombia. Or you don't have to look back many generations in most parts of the world. In some parts of the world, it's only one generation that our ancestors have been living tightly integrated into local ecologies and economies, and so you don't really have to stretch your imagination too far. But as you say, some people are so caught up in the very now that they might find it hard to stretch their imagination that far, or hard to imagine how they could adapt to that. And I think the more people that keep living it, the more it normalises that possibility for other people as well to see.
Fruits in antioxidants around, and what I find really exciting is that, look, there's a baby one coming up here, so already this system is starting to regenerate itself. And we've harvested timber out of here and firewood, and you can have your forest and harvest it too. You can desire no good to your womb, but this herb will affect it. Therefore, if you love children, if you love health, if you love ease, keep a syrup always by you, made of the juice of this herb, and sugar or honey, if it be, to cleanse the womb. And let such as be rich keep it for their poor neighbours, and bestow it as freely as I bestow my studies upon them, or else let them look to answer it another day, when the Lord shall come to make the inquisition of blood. What we're feeling now is the impact and results of globalisation, and the best way that we can actually respond to that and become resilient is by building strength in our local community, and for urban people, getting to know your neighbours and having little street events and supporting farmers markets and things like that. And just not buying stuff you don't need, and use and repair and recycle everything else. Repurpose, yeah.
Okay, just to finalize here, let's talk about the future. How do you see the new generation coming?
I feel for them. I really feel for them. and what they've got to deal with because of the inaction of the last 4 decades. It's a hard road that they have to negotiate. A lot of damage that they have to repair. We're only seeing the tip of the iceberg at the moment in terms of climate disasters, climate catastrophes. And it's not going to get better. Even if we just stopped emitting today, we've still got this legacy to deal with for decades. And at least if we stop today emitting greenhouse gases and overconsumption, at least, it can sort of level out and then eventually go down. But they need a lot of courage and they need a lot of support. And, that's a tough question.
Let's finish this in a happy way. Okay?
Yeah.
What do we need to keep doing? What are we doing right? And where are we going?
Love. Everyone needs to love each other and love local.
You want to see a change?